Come to a remote press conference today after Parliament and Member States struck a deal on the recovery fund of 8 billion to be released for farmers and rural areas to cope with the COVID consequences and build up a more resilient structure for future threats. We have in Rome, connected to this room and to the web streaming, the rapporteur on this file, Mr. De Castro, which should be now on with us. Mr. De Castro, can you hear us?
Perfettamente, grazie.
Perfettamente.
Yes.
This is the floor.
I hear you. So I can start?
Yes.
Okay. I will go in my language, Italian, okay? Bene.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be able to hold this press conference. Just a few hours ago, we reached an agreement, an interinstitutional agreement, with the German presidency and then with the Commission. So let me just remind you that the European Recovery and Resilience Fund is something which is designed to deal with a crisis that will be triggered by the Covid-19 epidemic, and it gives over 8 billion euros at today's prices to the European Agricultural Fund for Rural Development. But originally the idea was that this money would only be available once the new Common Agricultural Policy entered into force, which is the 1st of January 2023. Having reached an agreement between the Parliament, the Council and the Commission after just 2 rounds of negotiations with the trilogues, the co-legislators have agreed to make this money available from 2021 up to the end of 2022. Now, given the unprecedented challenges that are facing the European agricultural sector and our rural areas, this support needs to be made available as soon as possible so as to be able to genuinely stimulate the sector and facilitate economic recovery in the name of resilience, sustainability and digitalisation. All of this needs to be in line with the Green Deal targets that have been defined by the European Union. It has to be in line with the Farm to Fork strategy and the biodiversity strategy, which were presented by the Commission in spring of this year. But it's also important that it is consistent with other international commitments on the environment and the climate. So the agreed text will be approved by the European Parliament's plenary. There won't be any amendments, but what it does is it extends the transitional regulation text and with it the Common Agricultural Policy for 2 years up to the end of 31st of December 2022. So we're expecting the vote to be taken in December in the plenary. Now, the total amount awarded of 8 billion euros is going to be divided into 2.4 billion euros for 2021 and around 5.6 billion for 2022. And that division of funds reflects the fact that in 2021 European farmers will also have access to around 2.6 additional billion from the Rural Development Fund, which is part of the wider multi-annual financial framework. All of this combined means that the support for our agricultural operators and rural areas comes to in excess of 10 billion euros. Now, these funds can be co-financed with additional national monies up to a maximum of 400%, which effectively increases this 5-fold. Now, these funds are designed to stimulate recovery in the sector, so they shouldn't be used to finance measures that represent business as usual. There has to be some kind of added value in terms of resilience, sustainability and digitalisation. So, under the agreement, it has been stipulated that at least 55% of the 8 billion plus must be given to cooperation measures to new farmers, to small and medium-sized farmers and to rural SMEs, and above all should be used to make investments that promote social and economic development in rural areas. So that is making agriculture more accurate, smarter, and is going to emphasize digitalization and modernization. It's designed to improve working health and safety. It's designed to improve renewable energies and facilitate the circular economy and bioeconomy, and is also designed to improve access to IT and telecommunications in rural areas. This will allow all farmers to access this support, irrespective of the size of their operation and irrespective of their existing education and training. And that means, in turn, that member states will be able to boost this investment effort, taking it from the current 40% up to a maximum of 75%. In order to have environmental sustainability, social sustainability and economic sustainability, at least 37% of the money will be intended for agro-environmental measures, as reflected in the speech made by the President of the Commission, and in particular will be designed to promote organic farming, adaptation to climate change, reducing greenhouse gases from farming activities, improving land management, improving carbon absorption, and improving animal welfare, but also all of the activities that are encompassed by the LEADER programme. For the remainder of the funds, up to 8%, the member states will be free to decide which measures to be targeted. So whether the investment or the agro-environmental measures, or whether to intervene in other rural development plans, but all of the measures taken must be consistent with the non-regression clause. So that means that environmental measures must receive equivalent levels of funding comparable to 2014-2020. Also, it is important that this 55% threshold for investment and the recovery thresholds are respected and maintained. In addition to all of this information, the co-legislators have stressed the importance of some critical measures for rural development. It's important that accessibility is improved, in particular in terms of greater support for young farmers, taking the current figure of €70,000 and taking that up to €100,000. So that is the essence of what has been decided. We're waiting now for approval from the heads of state and government before we can proceed to the final vote in the plenary in December. Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, I'd be very happy to take them.
Much, Paolo De Castro, for this in-depth explanations of what was agreed with the German presidency this morning on aid to rural areas and farmers for the next 2 years. That comes to help them deal with the COVID crisis and build a more resilient future for them. I have a question for Mr. De Castro. Please, may I ask the journalist who is raising his hand to push on the speak button and name the media you are calling in from. Yours is the floor.
Okay.
Odile?
Sì.
Odile?
Buongiorno, signore Di Castro.
Good afternoon, Mr. De Castro. I'm Odile Harvey from Radio Nord-Bretagne and Radio Lyon and Radio Finistère. Now, we are based in an area that has a lot of agricultural activity, and I'm just wondering, in your proposal, is there any allowance made for training and education for farmers? Is there any way that they can access training on environmental standards, on how to make use of digitization technologies and so forth? Thank you.
Ringrazio per la domanda.
Thank you for that question, and the answer is yes. We are operating under the standard rules for rural development, and what we wanted to achieve today with this agreement was not only to make sure that these 8 billion euros were available to support our farmers and agricultural workers as soon as possible, but also we wanted to make sure that the funds were supporting existing rural development activities. So we've got these two thresholds, the 55% and the 37% for investment and agro-environmental measures, because we feel that there needs to be support for investment, but there also needs to be support for the general thrust of the Green Deal as proposed by the European Commission. So all training, all education which is covered under the rural development programmes can of course be financed as before. Bearing in mind, however, that there is this requirement that the two thresholds be adhered to. But there is this 8%, having said that the member states can use as they see fit. So that means that they can use that 8% for the measures I've described that are covered by these two thresholds, but they can also use it for education and training programs or for any other measures that they think would be suitable.
Thank you very much. Now we have Angelo Di Mambro. Are you online? Please push your speakers button and name the media you are calling in. Angelo? Angelo, you may ask your question. If you're not here, then let's get back to Odile, maybe. Odile, you have a follow-up question? No, doesn't seem to be the case. So back to Angelo. Are you able to connect to us? Press your speakers button. Angelo, yours is the floor for a question. You need to press the speak button, the mic. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't seem that he is coming in with a question. Oh,
hello?
Fantastic.
Okay.
Great.
In Italian, if I may.
Please, yes. Go ahead.
Onorevole De Castro.
Mr. Castro, I've got a question. Now, you have a lot of experience of agriculture in the European Union. In recent weeks, it seems that there's been an alliance that has been maintained between environmental organisations and agricultural organisations, and that's an alliance that has endured for over 20 odd years. But between them, these two sides, although they have argued, they have managed to reach agreement. But we have now seen a great deal of controversy and raised voices between farmers on the one hand and environmentalists on the other hand. So I'm just wondering, on the basis of your experience, so this form of alliance that we have seen under the Common Agricultural Policy for the last 20 years, is it broken? Or is the reality that both parties are actually going to have to sit down together and keep on talking?
Grazie.
Thank you, Angelo De Mambro, for that question. Certainly, you're correct. There has been a breakthrough this week, and particularly in plenary, on the Parliament's proposal. We do have to realise that democracy is broadly expressed in terms of majority voting. The vote on the CAP in plenary, the final vote, has had a lot of support from many in politics, and that is an expression of democracy. Working in trialogue, for example, is another aspect of this, and Parliament certainly in this farming versus environmental issue has been challenging many of the positions of Council. And I think that certainly much of this has been justified, but obviously this is dependent on this idea of being able to incorporate the principles of the European Green Deal and farm to fork within the text that we've designed. And certainly now we have the legal certainty, a legal proposal. And you can't call on the Chamber to abdicate its role and not discuss what is needed for the future. They have to implement the two directives on the European Green Deal and farm to fork. So we have been very successful in our proposal, and we've also got the opportunity of a mid-term review 2025, so that we can see how far we can incorporate legal aspects which come from the Commission's proposal. And certainly this should lead us to a good debate. Certainly we can't be stating that this environmental proposal is more ambitious than one we put at the beginning. More ambitious, however, than the agreement which we agreed on with Council. We have done our bit. We have a common agricultural policy, and we have to, of course, also bear in mind the income of the farmers. We need this balance between environment and social issues, and we feel that we have done what we can in this respect.
For this response. Now I see that Odile is...
We don't have the sound. We don't.
Now I see that Odile is raising her hand for a follow-up question. Please, could we have Odile back for a follow-up question? Odile, can you put up... Can you put up your speakers button? Well, otherwise, please get back to us on an individual basis. I see we have a bit of a sound issue here. And I would therefore like to close this press conference and see how we can get back to you on an individual basis.
If I may.
Yes.
Per venire incontro.
Probably to the request of our colleague Odile, I should just like to remind you that for the existence of the political agreement which we have achieved today, that's German Presidency, Parliament and Commission, we're providing a further 44% of resources under rural development for technical assistance. And I think from this viewpoint, I'm giving a more complete response than I did previously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is closing this press conference. I see Odile is happy with the answer. Thank you very much. I just remind you that you can read the details on the informal deal on our press room page on the Europol website. There is a press release out there. And just remember, this file will go to plenary in December, as Mr. De Castro announced. Thank you very much for following us. Thank you.